Hello everybody and welcome back. My name is Dominic, I'm the host of the Android Factory. I know it's been a while and I apologize, but a couple big moments on my side. First, I had a birthday, and second, I got married. Smash that like button for some big life moments here. Appreciate all the love and support. But let's go ahead and just jump right back into it here. We see in the emulator a nice, interesting list here. We have basically a grid item at the top and then a list item at the bottom here. We have some scrolling, horizontal scroll within these different elements here, and basically just going to work on some UI stuff when we get to the the screen that's going to display all of our different characters. So we're going to have two modes here, either the grid mode that we see at the top or the list mode here, and then we'll obviously be able to select them to go to the particular details page of that character. Before we jump into some compose work here, I do just want to call out this little flow diagram that I put together here, the sequence diagram. Feel free to pause the video if you want to take a look at it, because I'm not going to go through all of it here, but basically we have a user, a screen, view model, repository, just mapping out how this is going to work. And once we end up getting our characters back from the API, we're going to emit that information from the view model to our screen, right? And at first, we're going to default to maybe just the list view. And we're going to display the list or the data in a list here on the screen. There's going to be some option for the user to kind of toggle between the screen mode, so to speak. So whether it's in grid or whether it's in list display, and we're going to have to just react to whatever selection the user has made and handle, displaying it accordingly. So that's kind of the concept here. That's why some of this UI obviously looks repetitive and whatnot with just one character, but this is the concept behind it. The screen is going to get a bit more involved and whatnot, but this is the UI that we're going to work with here. So I've taken a screenshot here. I'm going to go ahead and just jump into the compose work. All right, and as we get started, we have the character grid item and our character list item here. Just went ahead and deleted all of the different content inside of it, and we're just going to build it back to match this UI that we see on the right screenshot that we took earlier. So taking a quick look here on the right, we see that we have a big image view in the middle, and then we just have the name of the character, and then we have this little status icon symbol that's up here because the character status is an enum that we have on the character that basically denotes if that character is alive, dead, or unknown, and we have different colors that kind of go with that. So this top example here is pretty straightforward. We're going to go ahead and implement this with a column here, and we are going to take a look at that background that we have there, that border, excuse me. And what we notice about that background there is that we can implement it with a border here to kind of get that action or that color that we're looking for there. So when we implement border, we will have the width of, let's just go with 1 dp. The brush here is where we can get this vertical gradient that if we look closely, it is a gradient from the transparent color to this Rick action color. So if you look at the very top of the screen, we don't actually have a border there, but then we see towards the bottom, we actually get this nice little fade in, and then we see that Rick action, that lighter blue color. I'm just going to go ahead and import the DP. And then there's one other thing here that we need to add in, the shape, the rounded corner shape of 12 dp, and that will go ahead and get us, what we see here at this point. Now, you can't see it from just an image here, but we're going to add an on click to this card as well. And with that, we can go ahead and set it's called the clickable action on our modifier, and we're just going to call the on click that we've passed into this composable function here. Now, the other thing to note with the clickable, composable here is that we want to, the modifier, we also are going to want to clip the rounded corner shape 12 dp as well, because otherwise the actual click here causes a ripple, and if we are not clipping basically the same that we are the same corner radius that we're applying either in the border or the background, the ripple will just be a rectangle and the card will look like, a rounded corner and whatnot. So you'll see that ripple bleed outside of the rounded edges, and it just doesn't look good. So we go ahead and apply the clipping here, the same, 12 dp that we have here for the border, so that it actually makes it look like you're clicking a rounded card as opposed to just that column. All right, and that's basically the parent that we need to worry about for this moment. The other thing that we have to obviously add in here is our character image, which is a composable we've used already before. The image URL here is going to come off of our character image URL. Also, because the parent has this clip attribute on it, this character image will actually get that roundedness for us. which is kind of nice as well. And then underneath it here, we do have a little bit of a text attribute. This is going to be the character's name, and we have a couple other attributes that we want to set here. We also, like every good composable here, we have the modifier being passed in. So instead of using a brand new modifier, we're going to go ahead and of course use the one that's passed in and then apply all of our styling so that something external can actually modify this composable on top of what we're already doing internally. And then if we take a look here, we will see this little, again, the circle there that kind of denotes the status of the color. And so we need to actually go ahead and build that out as well. I'm going to do it in its own little composable so that we can break this out in the future. Because as we see in the image here on the other composable, we have that very same view or composable that we're going to use. So we're going to make the character status circle. This is going to take in just that character status, and it's basically just going to draw exactly what we want. And so here we're going to go ahead and do something similar with our background here. We're going to have that brush so that we can get that black, kind of gradient looking background. So we're going to have our brush.radial gradient. This is going to be a list of our black color to the transparent color so that it kind of fades away. We're then of course going to apply a shape here, and in this case we're going to actually have the circle shape as well. And then we're going to update one little attribute on the actual box here. The content alignment is going to be alignment.center so that we can go ahead and build a little element inside of it, and it's going to be centered as well. So we're just going to go ahead and leverage another box here. This is going to be its own modifier. We're going to apply a little bit of padding here, just as a random guess, 6 dp. And then we're going to go ahead and set the color here to our status. On the background, we're going to have the color here be the status.color coming from our character status passed in. And then, of course, we are going to have our circle shape as well here, just to kind of match and create that little circle inside of a circle look. So we have our character status circle here that's now a reusable component. We're going to go ahead and copy that, paste it inside of here. Inside of the character status, inside of the column, but we're going to have to update that in 1 second. Then we're going to just fill in the information we need. All right, and we're at a reasonable stopping point here to see what's actually happening. So we're going to go ahead and run it here. The one thing that I did do off screen is just update the one screen that we have loading in. So once we have fetched a particular character, we are just hard coding the screen to have 2 character grid items at the very top. So we'll see that when we go ahead and rerun things here. Okay, and rerunning here, we do see that we're kind of getting a little bit of the UI to come back, but we'll see here, first things first, that we have a little bit of an issue here with the fact that we're just in a column, right? We have just one parent column, we have the image, the status circle, and then text. And as we see here, we have the exact same display, which is exactly what we would expect, but actually we want these 2 elements to kind of overlap one another. So in order to do that, we're going to go ahead and put a box here, and then we're just going to pop these inside of a box. Once we rerun from there, we could see these things actually now overlap, but we do have this little issue of, the box is just going to put everything in the top left here. So what we're going to do here is we're actually going to push the character status circle away from the top left by simply adding in a little bit of padding here. So we can just say start, equals, let's say 6 dp, and then top also equals 6 dp, and that should go ahead and just push it away. And rerunning things here, we do see now that is working as expected. We do have a little bit of an issue with our character status circle though. We try to go ahead and just apply a size here to our box, the background there. Okay, so that did make it a little bit bigger here. Let me see if this applies the size here, and let's see if that helps. Yep, and so at this point we do now see that we do have a little bit of that green color. Let's just go ahead and make that a lot smaller though, because it looks a little ridiculous. All right, and I turned it into 8 instead of 6, size 20, and then there we go. We kind of have that little indicator coming back to life, so that's good enough for now. The other little bit here that we notice is that the text here is just kind of butting up against the end. I don't really like that, so we're just going to quickly apply some padding here to the text element. After applying some 6 dp on the vertical padding, we now basically have that UI put back together. So yeah, if we take a look at this other view here, it does look look pretty similar. The green dot might be a little bit bigger, but basically everything else is exactly the same. All right, so we basically have the grid item put back together. We're going to work on the list item next, but as we go ahead and do that, please feel free to smash that like button to help me out. Subscribe if you are brand new, and of course, comment down below how you think I'm doing here. I'm going to go ahead and create the character status circle as its own little file that we can go ahead and use. We're basically going to reuse this whole composable here because we see it being used in the other composable that we need to build out as well, the list view instead. And after moving this composable to its own file, of course, we're going to go ahead and create the preview as well to make it a little bit easier to see. And we could see here that I inadvertently made a stoplight situation here, but we have the green, yellow, and red, and that corresponds to the alive, unknown, and dead character statuses here. So now we can get a little glimpse of how this is going to look, just in the composable itself. All right, so taking a look at our list elements here, they look quite similar, right? We have some similarities to the grid item there that we just made. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy some of the stuff over from the previous composable that we made here. We're going to, I guess we don't have a modifier here, so we'll pass one in. And instead of a column here, we are going to just use a row because we want things moving left to right here. And then instead of our vertical gradient, we are going to want the horizontal gradient, but that will give us the same transition from transparent to that color. Truthfully, again, we are going to want that box here so that we can go ahead and create this overlapping, and just like that, we'll kind of pop those two in there. I do think we are going to have to update the character image modifier a little bit here, but we can do that later. And then we have this horizontally scrolling list of elements here. And we see in our character list item, we have the data points here as a part of the composable here, and that's because we are just displaying them here, for the UI. So what we're going to do here is leverage the lazy horizontal grid here. The rows is going to be grid cells, not just two, but grid cells, and we're going to have the fixed version. Adaptive and fixed size is not what we want. We're going to fix them to 2 rows here so that we have the top row and the bottom row, and then our content at this point is just going to go inside. Similar to the other lazy items, the lazy columns and lazy rows, we're going to use the items function here. We're going to have our items be the character data points that we want to display. We're of course going to have our key here. It's just going to be it.hashcode, and then our content will go here right afterwards, right? So it works exactly the same, the grids here, as the lazy columns and rows here. But speaking of columns, we're actually going to leverage a column here because we want to have the vertical arrangement set to center here so that we have each one of these elements that are going to be within the lazy grid to be in a column that is centered appropriately, right? And we have the data point component here, name that little variable, and we are going to have our data point at that point be displayed here. All right, well, we're at a reasonable stopping point here, so let's go ahead and just, see what is going on, how this works. I'm going to go ahead and uncomment this stuff that I had before. So basically underneath these two items that are the grid items, we're going to repeat for 10 times, put a little space there, and have our list item displayed beneath that. And after rerunning it here, we actually run into a crash here. Lazy horizontal grid's height should be bound by its parent. Forgot about that one, so that's quite interesting. But basically, the lazy horizontal grid is a child of our row component here, so we're just going to want to go ahead and apply a height here. Let's just go with, 140 dp, see how that looks, and then we can always adjust afterwards. Rerunning here, we run into an issue immediately. So that's fun. We are going to have to just kind of manage our character image a tiny bit here. If we go ahead and jump into it, the default modifier that is applied here actually tells it to fill max width, have the aspect ratio of 1f, and then clip 12 dp to kind of give it that rounded view here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that, and we're going to go ahead and change this around because we don't need the fill max width because we are seeing that kind of creates a little bit of a problem. So let's simply start with just clipping that bit out, and we're just going to say aspect ratio 1 and clip it to 12 dp there, and that looks a little bit better. There's some other work that we need to do, but truthfully, that probably looks pretty good. All right, the other thing we need to do here, we need to take that, that character status circle and push it out a little bit. Copying the same padding that we had from the other view at the top of the screen, we went ahead and just had the 6 dp. That looks pretty good. We'll see here that we are horizontally scrolling. We could use a little bit of padding because it butts up against the edge, and then we're also recognizing that some of these have pretty long names here, so we're gonna have to clean that up as well. Taking a small look here at just the padding issue, we can go ahead and update the the content padding. I believe it's padding values. Yep, the vertical spacing doesn't look too bad. It's really just the horizontal. So let's go ahead with the start 16 and the end to be 16 as well. And rerunning here, we do see a little bit more space there, which is really nice. So all that kind of looks a little bit better, except now we are running into this long description here on this particular data point. And if we look closely, we actually don't even have a name here, right? Beth Smith doesn't show up on any of these elements here. So we are going to have to go ahead and fix that as well. And so both of these issues here, if we flip over to this image here, we see the name Beth Smith that comes up as one of these components. And then we also have a little bit of logic here to kind of just truncate things after a certain amount. So first and foremost, we can very easily get the name back in there because we have the items here being the character data points that are passed in. Now those character data points that are passed in don't actually have the name associated with them. So what we can do here is we can just create a new list, and we're going to have the a data point here where the title is going to be name, and the description value is going to be the character dot name, and we're simply just going to add that list, which is just one element, to the list of character data points, and then we're going to go ahead and see that the name comes up as our first data point now. Perfect. So now we see Beth Smith. That works really well. We just have the other issue here on the description side of things. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a different function here. We're just going to call this, I don't know, sanitize data point. For display, it's going to take in a particular data point and it's going to return another data point here. And so we can say, let's see here, let's say the new description is going to be if our data point dot description dot, what is it? It's going to be length because that's a string, is greater than 14. We're going to take the data point description, we're going to take the first 12, and then we're going to add to it something like this, right? A little dot dot. Otherwise, we're going to have just the data point dot description there. So now we're going to go ahead and basically sanitize just that description, and then we're going to return the data point dot copy where the description equals our new description. And now we have our data point component, we have our data point that we want to display. We're simply just going to call the sanitized data point on the data point that we want to display, and everything should kind of drop into place here. Perfect. Taking a look at this element now, we actually do see that it is kind of getting cut off. The only issue here is that the next element here just starts immediately afterwards, right? The species, human, earth, all that kind of stuff. So inside of the grid, they really aren't there's no padding, or they're kind of just buttoned up against one another. So again, another helpful reason why we have this column. On here, we can just set the modifier.padding, the end of it to just be the 16 dp. We'll just see how that looks as well, pushing the next element away from the current one. And now we see we do get that little bit of a gap there, which is super helpful. And yeah, I mean, truthfully, that doesn't look too bad at all. All right, folks, and with that, I think we're going to wrap this episode. Thank you so much for making it through. If you really made it all the way here, we are ready now to use these different list items and grid items inside of the rest of our application. So the next episode, we're going to go ahead, make some API calls, get more than just one character, right? Get multiple characters and display them as such. Eventually, we're going to build in that way for the user to go ahead and transition the screen between the grid item and the list item. So we're starting to build out a little bit more functionality inside of the application. I'm excited to bring it to you. I will catch you there. Thanks.